Good evening to everyone on the call, and welcome to the masterclass on combating fraud using technology. Very happy to uh, to mention that IRM India Regional Group and ENY are jointly hosting this. I would like to express gratitude to ENY for collaborating on this with IRM India Regional Group. My name is Rama Warrior. I am a deputy chair for the India Regional Group. I run an independent consultancy. Before that, I used to be managing partner for Infosys Consulting, and my association with IRM goes back for about 25 years when I registered for the professional exams of IRM. I'm happy to welcome all of you to this session. A very relevant topic is what we're going to discuss today, and we have two very eminent speakers to talk to us, share their views on this. The proliferation of technology, especially in recent times when we have a lot of restrictions meeting face to face, is in our personal and professional spheres is very evident. Whether you're dealing with a street side vendor for a small transaction or big corporates interacting with each other, we have everything happening on technology platform, and we've all become some screen watchers all the time. That also that brings a lot of convenience. I can sit in my chair where I'm now, learn things, work, participate in a seminar like this, share my views with you, have my entertainment, play games, whatever I want from the chair which I'm sitting in, which brings a lot of flexibility into the way which I operate, but it also brings along with it its own risk exposures and vulnerabilities. So we are going to look at some of those in today's webinar. Also, I would like to mention about the stakes being very high, and that is leading to an impact of the frauds which we see on the technology side from both on personal as well as professional sides, both as small individuals as well as large corporates. And when technology platform is the cause for this, there's no question of you're manually intervening and trying to prevent the frauds or control the fraud. So it is very important that we look at how we can use technology itself to control the frauds and manage the risk effectively. And with a lot of new technologies coming in, we see how people are using these technologies to combat fraud. And I'm looking forward to this conversation as keen as you are to listen to our experts to see what they have to share from their experience on this. What we'll do, the format we'll follow today is we'll have two of our speakers, Arpinder and Shabrina, sharing their views, and we'll keep the last 8 to 10 minutes for question answers. I would request you to use the chat box and type out your questions as and when it strikes you, and we will take those questions in the last 8 to 10 minutes. My pleasure to introduce two of the speakers today. We have Arpinder, who's a partner and head of Indian emerging markets for forensics and integrity services at ENY. He has tremendous experience, 25 years plus experience in global investigations and dispute advisory. Very actively involved in corporate governance matters. Especially invite you to ICAI's Digital Accounting and Assurance Board. And he has a very unique background of being an internal auditor, statutory auditor, financial controller, and leading forensic investigations now. So that's a very extensive experience that Arpinder brings to the table. And joining him is Shabrina Kandla, who's Director of Forensic and Integrity Services at ENY, specializes in cybercrime investigations, computer forensics, and e-discovery projects. And he also brings in international experience on these lines, handling large projects in forensic collections, investigations, e-discovery, and all. And interestingly, he has also been a part of the team which helped develop a computer forensic and e-discovery lab in Hyderabad. So without taking much time, let me hand over to Arpinder and Shabrina to share their views, experiences, and the perspective they have on using technology, on our topic today, which is using technology to combat frauds. Over to you, Arpinder and Shabrina.
Thank you so much, Rama, for that introduction, and good to be a part of this session. So if you can go to the next slide, Nia, in the interest of time, I will go right into it because we have, I think, about an hour. So fraud is a very topical topic today. I'm sure all of you read about it in the newspaper. It's happening every day. Issues could be ranging from cyber attacks and ransomware, which is actually happening. I also never thought it would happen. I mean, now 50% of my team at EY is working on cyber issues, which was never the case earlier. Whistleblower complaints are coming out quite a lot. There's a lot of, obviously, attrition of employees. There's a lot of disruption in the workforce. This is leading to a lot of pull and push, as we put it, and whistleblower complaints are increasing. Now there's a lot of regulations, which I'll obviously go through in my presentation, which shows that whistleblower complaints can't be ignored anymore. Should never have been ignored, but I think the controls and laws have become stricter, which makes it even more difficult for boards, and every whistleblower complaint needs to be addressed. Also, bribery and corruption, which is, in the US they call it Foreign Corrupt Practices Act, UK they call it the UK Bribery Act, and in India it's the Prevention of Corruption Act. All the statutes look at bribery and corruption in a very serious manner, which has potentially been an issue in India because it ranks not very high on the Transparency International Index. You've had the non-performing assets. Obviously, everyone's been reading about the bank issues. Different banks have had multiple issues. All have been around corporate governance, related party transactions, green, rotating loans when they should not have. So there are a huge number of issues, conflict of interest. I can just keep going on and on and on. And the newspaper, the testimony of the fact that I think it's an area which is right now very topical and hot when it comes to boards and companies having to deal with this as a big fraud risk, as something which is very, very critical. If we can go to the next slide, please. Yeah. So these are some statistics, but I'll take the bottom part first. I think fraud has always been an issue, but in the pandemic, it has become more of an issue. First, there is declining financial performance. There's a lot of pressure on corporates because stock markets are booming. People have to show good results. What does that lead to? It's the risk that financial statements aren't going to be that robust, or they'll be under some sort of scrutiny. Compliances, process, and controls are also impacted during the pandemic. People are working from home. Controls aren't as good as they used to be. People are adopting technology very quickly, but with adopting technology very quickly, there are new risks which emerge, which I don't think companies have got their hands around. So I think it's a recipe for more fraud, as I would put it. So it's very important for compliance professionals, governance professionals, and organizations to be very, very aware and ready for this, what's going to hit them. And I think the standards of integrity have improved in India in the last, but I think there is still a long journey for us to do in the country. But the basic point is, whenever there is some stress, like there was in 2018, there enough service to say there will be a lot of disruption, fraud, and corruption risk which will follow. Can we, Neha, go to the next slide? A little bit about the regulatory landscape. I mean, if you look at it, the Competition Amendment Bill has come out. It gives the Director General of CCI a lot of authority. We have seen that yesterday there was news about certain raids happening at certain corporates by the Competition Commission of India authorities. So they have become very, very aggressive. It's around antitrust. For people who don't know, it's around monopolistic practices or cartelization. The company's auditor's report, I'll go into more detail at a later slide, so I won't take time here. There is a data privacy bill. It's still a draft bill. It hasn't yet come into force, but it's similar to the GDPR. So for folks who know a little bit about data privacy, obviously you need a data privacy officer. It talks about having private information segregated. It talks about deleting private information if an employee or a customer or anybody asks for it. So there are a lot of terms and conditions. There are some questions also, but I think it's something which is being heavily debated. If you look at SEBI insider trading, that's been a very topical topic again, because around unpublished sensitive information, there was a lot of noise about 2 years back around information on financials rotating around on WhatsApps prior to them being released. So it is a very, very serious issue. Prevention of Corruption Act, I mentioned to you earlier, it's around bribe giving as an offense. It is a very serious issue. Basically, bribes is when you give any money to a government official to get a license, which is not legal. And obviously, legal fee is fine, but paying something to get something done without it being approved legally is a serious issue. Fugitive Economic Offenders Act was obviously created when a few of our people who have been current litigation against, who have left the country. It was around one famous case around a liquor baron, which provoked creating this particular act. But I think it's an act which deters people from running away or leaving the country without facing the legal and regulatory system. Whistleblowing regulations by SEBI, there's been a hot debated topic because there's been recent requirements of SEBI saying all forensic audits of listed companies must be disclosed. So I think that is something which is again a very debated topic. But a lot of changes in regulations as a bottom line. Obviously, Shabri will go into much more detail on the technology side, but each one of these requires some pulls and pushes. Can we go to the next slide? Caro, I think I'll focus on one aspect, which is the fraud and whistleblower complaints. Obviously, the fact is that the fraud and whistleblower complaints, the auditor now has to report on it. It reports on any fraud in the company, any fraud by the company, any fraud by the third parties. There was always the Caro reporting previously, but now the reporting has become much more strict. The reporting requires a lot more detailing around the whistleblower complaints. So there will be a lot of pull and push between the auditor and the company going forward. Also, the auditor has to report on repayment of loans and proceedings against the company for holding Benami property. So there are a lot of new things. In fact, when an auditor resigns now, there's so much focus that why has he resigned? What was the issue? The stock price drops. Reporting on NBSCs, reporting on cash losses. I mean, I can, as I said, go on and on, but then Shabri won't get a chance to talk about technology, which is really what you all want to hear about today. Can we go to the next slide, Neha? Another thing is fraud risks in a post COVID-19 world. So there have been a lot of new risks which have come to the surface. One is disruption in supply chain. There has been a lot of disruption in supply chains. There's a lot of pull and push between vendors and customers. People have not got supplies. People don't want that much supply which they'd ordered pre-COVID. There's going to be a lot of disputes, litigations, potential fraud. There's also lapse in integrity where people are desperate to retain their jobs, they're ready to do anything, even at the cost of compliance. These are short-term issues. Then you have window dressing, which I've mentioned again earlier. Cybercrime. Cybercrime is something which, as I said, is very topical. Counterfeiting, unfortunately, is a serious issue because of the fact you can see even hand sanitizers are counterfeited now. So there are a lot of new risks which have come into a post-COVID time, which need to be re-looked at. Obviously, the models have changed, the SOPs have changed. Everybody has to adapt their risk assessment for that. You're dealing with people you've never met before. You're just meeting them virtually. You don't know who they are. So, as I said, a lot of new risks, but every company needs to adapt to this new world. Can we go to the next slide, please? Last slide before I hand over to Shabri is technology has to be an enabler. I don't think today anybody can have a robust compliance program of a large company without having technology. Without analytics, you cannot look at huge amounts of data, no matter how hard you try. Spreadsheets don't work anymore. On getting so much data into it, being able to analyze it. Continuous monitoring is very important. Where they're not actually physically going on site, but you can actually do remote audits. Technology provides deep insights. It learns. So for instance, what is artificial intelligence? Basically, you're looking at past trends, learning from it and creating future trends. And the last bit is robotics. I mean, it's very useful when you do third-party screening. You don't need to do these manual processes again and again. It's like the old days macro, which we used to have. So I think technology is going to become more and more crucial, but I won't take the heat off Shabri. So Shabri, I'll pass it on to you because this is really your area, but over to you.
Thank you so much, Rapinder. Thanks, everyone. Hi, Rama. Thanks for the opportunity and also the opening comments. So before I go to the next slides, I just want to talk about what I'm going to cover in the next set of slides. Fraud prevention using technology has made enormous strides from advances in computing speeds like your high performance analytics, machine learning, and other forms of artificial intelligence techniques. As Arpinder said, fraud touches every area of our lives. It arises, it raises the price of what we pay for the goods and services, squanders tax money, pulls resources from innovation, and even sometimes it costs human lives. Periodically, the latest major fraud hits, which we have seen in the headlines, as other organizations sit back and watch, telling themselves that it doesn't happen here, or we will not encounter this issue. But the reality is that fraud can happen anywhere. Nobody can predict. While only relatively few major frauds are picked up by the media or the media houses, which we see in the news, huge sums are lost by all kinds of businesses as a result of high number of smaller frauds that are being committed. Neha, could you please jump onto the next slide for me, please? Thank you. So I would like to talk about these five elements, which are key fraud elements every organization need to pay attention. They are third-party due diligence, people background checks, process and systems, cyber security, and customers. Neha, let's talk about third-party risks. So the next slide actually talks about, in this business world, we have seen increased third-party risks. These are some of the examples which most of the companies are currently facing, or they would have faced in the recent past. I will actually talk about a few of them. I will not cover everything here, but if you look at involvement in bribery and corruption, how technology is helping in mitigating these risks. So there are technologies that can be applied in order to identify a bribery or a corruption case in an organization using continuous monitoring systems nowadays with advanced analytics, identifying the needle in the haystack, pull it out, and then identify who performed that and remove them from the organization. So there are multiple technologies that are being employed, which I will talk about in the coming slides. And featuring in sanctions list, bankruptcy or similar situations, including indicating financial distress, as Arpinder mentioned, the NPA cases. There are multiple technologies nowadays. They've been used to identify and help pull out those transactions which are needed for these cases to be solved. Proper background checks for third parties where the risk is high, whether it's a supplier, vendor, or a customer, is needed. Earlier, only background checks were only done on suppliers. However, nowadays the risk is also with customers as well. So these are some of the increased third-party risks I want to talk about here. Neha, please jump on to the next one. So how to mitigate them, right? So Arpinder already mentioned about litigation check tools which are done through RPA process. So using technology, we can, there are multiple tools which can mitigate these types of risks, which originates due to interaction with several vendors, such as third parties, customers, suppliers, etc. We use multiple technologies such as national-wide litigation check through robotic tool, which can search for litigation records across courts that are available online, such as Supreme Court, High Courts, the local district courts. Regulatory checks through online sources such as income tax authorities, SEBI, Ministry of Corporate Affairs, etc. Apart from the technology-based checks, which I have mentioned on the right side, we also perform, or there are methodologies to perform full-scale due diligence checks and use a case management tools. There are multiple case management tools now which are advanced, which is a human independent, and it actually stores on a central server, and the data is secured enough that if a person leaves the company, you can quickly access and take a call. Every data is stored on, as I said, central repository received from the client. The reports and the questionnaires are all stored, and then all these checks are performed before taking an action on that particular supplier or a client. Neha? So touching upon the other element, which is people, we just finished the TP, third parties. Now I'm talking about people. There are key risks associated with people also in an organization, because during the lockdown itself, a lack of access to a lot of respondents. There were the standard processes of doing a background check manually, going to their houses, taking the pictures whether that person is actually coming from that place or not. From a risk perspective, it became a challenge. So now in this kind of situation, the technology has actually helped in identifying and clearing out the background checks of employees using geotagging mechanisms, where you need not go to a person's house to identify whether he's actually from that location or not. You can quickly send out a geotagging link, and then he can upload his location details, his photographs, upload everything, and then the central team could quickly check and verify whether a company or an individual has passed the background check or not. Apart from that, reliability and updating the public domain information sources, there are multiple sites where we can quickly identify whether is a person or an individual have any outstanding cases in any court or not. So I will talk about in the next slide the actual tool and also some of the dashboards around this solution which is available. Neha, please jump on to the next one, please. These are some of the risks. Now we'll talk about the technology part of it. How it is how we are conducting the background checks using the technology. Excuse me. So basically, coming to the people in the organization, there are key risks need to be addressed by conducting background checks, which is involving self-verification, education check through various online sources, college, university, etc. Criminal and employment checks using online sources, self-addressor verification and geotagging. So during the pandemic, as an example, if I can quote, give me 1 minute, I'll just have some water. Excuse me, everyone. So during the pandemic itself, we have received multiple requests from a lot of corporates to help them onboard employees from a risk perspective, covering all these mandatory checks which are needed to onboard any employee before HR releases the offer or after the offer is released. We assisted them in background checks using our technology solution, and right now it has become one of the most required solution, and these kind of solutions are being utilized or used by a lot of other corporates as well. I just wanted to give you a glimpse of what is being done in this area for your information. Neha, please. Now let's quickly talk about the process and systems. As Arpinder mentioned in his slides, continuous monitoring mechanisms are becoming key, as opposed to traditional one-time analytics the clients used to do, or most of the organizations used to do with the continuous monitoring framework. This helps to continuously monitor transactions on a periodic basis to identify the outliers with respect to the business processes, right from getting the data, cleaning it, processing it, and performing analytics, to share the relevant records which are required for the compliance or fraud investigation officers to quickly take a call to mark those transactions as a false positive or a true positive, to take a call on the particular transaction. This information is fed back into the system again once a preliminary test is done, to refine the model and then define analytics to get more meaningful and focused transactions in the subsequent runs. So once you perform this, there you can probably feed back the results, and then the systems would automatically pull out those red flags and apply it on a upcoming data sets for other quarters or quarterly, or whenever the new feed is done to the system, it will quickly identify and throw you the red flags. We will talk about a specific example with respect to this solution. Neha, can you please go to the next slide? Yeah. Particularly with the procure to pay analytics. As a typical example from the continuous monitoring platform, this slide shows you the complete P2P cycle and all the different analytics can be performed across all parts of which it compromises, right? Right from planning, procurement, invoicing, billing, shipping, delivery, all portions can be covered in this tool on the whole. Below are some of the tests which we can do. For example, if you look at it, we can identify unexpected relationships between vendors or vendors and employees using fuzzy matching concepts. Duplicate analysis based on invoice numbers, where the user can very clearly change the character of the original invoice number and the ERP accepts it as a new invoice, but the intention is to create a duplicate. A comparison of a PO and a GRN, a goods received note, matching if the quantities and amounts match on both. These are some of the tests. There are many to cover, but I'll just, interest of time, I'll quickly jump on to the next one. Neha, could you please jump onto the next slide, please? Yeah. So after doing this test from the previous slide, which I just showed, wanted to showcase the outliers or anomalies usually which brings out in understanding, as opposed to an Excel report, which we usually see. A typical dashboard would have different ways the data would be stratified. Here you see 4 ways, and like many visualization tools, the option to select any data point in one visual and the other visuals get filtered automatically. I'm sure you guys would have used multiple data analytics tools like Tableaus, etc. This is similar to that. Also on the side to the right we have test filters and slice and dice the data as necessary to come to a conclusion and ultimately drive your decisions from a fraud perspective. Neha? Next element we would like to touch upon is data governance, which is one of the hot topics now after GDPR and other data privacy rules which came up. There are many sources that predict exponential data growth, towards 2020 and beyond. Yet they are all in broad agreement that size of digital universe will double every 2 years at least, a 50-fold growth from 2010 to 2020. You see the graph here. There has been an increase in data from 16 zettabytes in 2016 to 163 in 2025. That's what is expected. In 2025, every 18 seconds, every person will interact once every 80 seconds with a connected device, be it IoTs or all the digital media. In an increasingly digital world, as the data is increasing, organizations are facing new challenges in handling the data. They have difficulties in identifying the data, which is critical, which is not, and they have which they have in the organization, and where the data is located is becoming a bigger problem. Who has access to it? How the data is being used by the employees? Such threats can be from both internal and external, right? So that's the biggest problem now. Now, to add to these challenges over the past few years, as I said, there is an increased data governance and data privacy regulations like GDPR in the Europe, CCPA in the US, and the India Data Privacy Bill, which Arpinder mentioned, which is amended, currently in the draft stage, which will be coming soon, will be implemented soon. Organization needs to ensure that they have adequate data protection measures, or having a data privacy officer in place, not only to protect their data but also to comply with these regulations. Otherwise, the fines are extremely high. Neha, can you please jump on to the next slide, please? Thank you. Here's a step-by-step guide, just a reference. I'll not go deeper into this, but step-by-step guide for data governance. So assess, discover, inventory, data flow diagrams, report, and review. Keeping these problem statements in view, there are multiple technologies already available, and a lot of companies are developing in-house tools for each of these steps. Because, for example, data discovery itself is a large component in this identifying data and time-consuming activity in the entire workflow. A lot of people, companies leverages a solution, multiple solutions to discover the data automatically and help them inbuilt rules and machine learning techniques to discover and identify PII data within their organization, and then how to report it when something happens. When for example, if you have seen the recent cases where GDPR was GDPR fines were um, uh, for companies, they were unable to identify where their customer data was to delete when a request for delete permission or a request came into the organization. They were unable to inventory the data, identify the PII, and then respond to that request. So this plays a major role, and going forward, I think companies will have to invest a lot to kind of put this data governance in place, ensuring that their entire data is secured from a critical crown jewels versus other data which is not required in the organization to be stored for business purposes. Neha, could you please jump on to the next one, please? Quickly, I will not jump deeper into this, but for an understanding, if we understand the categorization of data sources in an organization, right, broadly we have structured and unstructured data sources. Structured data sources are like your application databases, ERPs, SAPs, Oracle, SQLs, any other ERP in-house systems that would have developed to store the structured data. And the other unstructured data sources are like your emails, data residing on laptops, servers, desktops, network shares, your cloud instances, etc. Right? While structured data may not be difficult to map, the challenge lies in identifying the PII data from unstructured data sources. So going back to the previous point of identifying the PII for any data governance related request, this becomes very important as to identify your structured and unstructured data, and then perform this classification and respond to those incidents, because the fines will be huge if you don't respond back on time. Neha, could you please jump on to the next one? So there are multiple technologies. As I said, this is one of the technology which we use for all of our clients. This is a glimpse of how the dashboards look like when we perform a data discovery activity, how the data is being identified between rot, which is redundant, obsolete, and trivial, and what is actually to be secured, on what data we need to identify or perform the classification for PII, etc. So I'll not go deeper into this, but these are some of the dashboards which I just wanted to kind of give you a heads up by department, by data sources, by timeline, by multiple dimensions. Neha, jump on to the next one, which actually talks about another solution a lot of companies are now implementing on real-time basis, performing email and social media monitoring, because for compliance officers, after an incident had happened, doing an investigation, after a problem has been already occurred, before problem occurs, can we identify quickly in near real-time basis and take action against them within an organization? So there is an example here. I will not take much of the time, but the email compliance monitoring solution, which actually reads all the emails in the organization from a fraud perspective. There are based on the emotions involved in the email, the tool will automatically identify which email is actually harsh, which email talks about a fraudulent related transaction. This it uses multiple linguistic machine learning algorithms to identify such transactions, and quickly the compliance officer will be able to take a call on those, take an action on that, and then involve the leadership to kind of take an action on that before something happens to the organization. So this allows clients to proactively monitor the risk communications to avoid insider tradings, loss of intellectual property, employee employee harassments, sexual harassments, etc. Using process automation, artificial intelligence, machine learning, and multilinguistic tools that are used in these solutions. This is one of the dashboard here on the right hand side actually pulls out your, so once the data is ingested into the platform, it throws you the bifurcation of based on the keyword. It actually gives you a keyword based that what are the emails talking about threat, stock, payment, etc. So you need not again go back and look for such emails. You can quickly go into that and look at it. Neha, if you could jump on to the next one, we will jump on to the next element, which is cybersecurity. Today, we all know that cyber attacks have become the new normal, and cybersecurity has emerged as one of the top 3 business risks at every organization. While in the last decade, we have seen the evolution of new technologies like AI, machine learning, RPA processes, blockchains, use of drones, IoTs, etc. We have also seen the evolution of cyber criminals using the most sophisticated techniques to penetrate through the organization network systems and affect them. While the adoption of social media has helped people in communicating at a click of a button, it has also made the personal data of individuals so vulnerable that every cyber criminal are on the constant lookout to steal this information and sell them in the so-called dark web, for example, for various benefits. The recent post we have seen, or what we have identified for the clients, is most of the SQL databases are being exfiltrated and put it on dark web. They've been selling those the SQL databases containing customer accounts, customer details, medical records, whatnot. Everything is being part of that data sets has been put it forward in dark web. Some of the recent, this slide actually talks about some of the recent large cyber attacks that made news, which is a Marriott attack. Everybody is aware of which 500 million customer data was exfiltrated. British Airways attack, which was given again significant and caused disruption in flight operations briefly for the company. Since GDPR, the European regulation of data privacy, came into existence, we have seen more than 5 billion worth of direct and indirect fines have been levied on most of the corporations globally, including on some of the tech giants like Google, Facebook, Uber, etc. In 2017, a major ransomware-related attack called WannaCry caused business operations impact across multiple sectors, including healthcare, government, telecom, oil and gas, etc. It impacts was felt across more than 100 countries in the world. If you can jump on to the next one, Neha, some of the key highlights about recent, cyber trends involves. These are some of the numbers. So 55% of the organizations are not or do not make protecting part of their strategy. 53% have no cyber program or an obsolete one. 38% would likely to detect a sophisticated breach. I will not spend much of the time on this. It's self-explanatory here in some of the figures. We'll jump on to the next one, Neha, keeping time in mind. We have 15 minutes. So some of the key, key highlights we already discussed. So an attacker has, it is said that an attacker sits on the system for 120 to 245 days before causing any damage to the environment. So it's not that the attacker comes in and attacks. He sits in the organization for a longer time, compromises the network, gets into one after the other without causing any alerts in their current cybersecurity programs, and then he performs the damage after these many days. Neha, can you jump on to the next one? I think we already spoke about this, as I said in the previous slides. We have seen a lot of new technologies like AI, ML, IoTs, RPAs came into picture. The same way, even the fraudsters are using these malwares, the combination of malwares, bots, performing social engineering attacks to gain access to customer accounts and cause the damage to the customers, employees' data, customer data, for organizations and putting it in the dark web. Be it be Azure, be it be cloud, on-prem, everything is included in this. You can go back to the next one, please. Thank you, Neha. So, though there are multiple ways in which hackers were be able to penetrate through the organization network. From the statistics perspective, the top three were malware, phishing, notably email phishing, and the data theft. These days, it's ransomware. I'm sure everybody is aware of what is a malware. I'll not talk much about it, but a malware is a software program which damages or performs unwanted actions on a computer system without users' knowledge in the network. There are again various types of malwares like ransomwares, which like hijacking the systems so that users cannot perform any duties. They'll lock it unless and until you pay the ransomware. The decryption keys will not be sent to the organization to gain access to the data. And during COVID, we have seen so many clients, majorly the hospitals, the pharmaceutical companies have been hit with major ransomware attacks. It's all in the news. And until and unless most of the companies didn't had proper backup plans, hence they had to kind of work with the hacker, pay back the ransomware, and take the data. They had no other choice because their entire Active Directories, not only the data, their Active Directories, their entire network got compromised, including their ERPs, etc. I can jump on to the next one, Neha. Thank you. So, who is involved in high impact breach? Highly confidential data theft, industrial property, IP theft, sabotage of industrial control systems. These are all part of the impact, high impact breaches, mostly for the theft of PII. Investigation teams provides the report to, internal stakeholders, external stakeholders with all the damage assessment and containment, restoration, remediation, eradication, and crisis management. These are the key things which are required whenever an incident happens. So this kind of gives an overall perspective as to who all needs to be made aware when something happens, mostly in high impact breaches. Can you go to the next one? We will talk about 6 leading practices which would assist at various levels of data breach with several solutions. For example, technology, operating model, developing and establishing capabilities, processes, organizations, constructs to help achieve future state vision across all pillars are all required. So these are ransomware recovery, remediation, modernization of IT assets, remediation and moderation of security controls, IT risk management of non-integrated businesses, data governance, etc. These are all the 6 components which needs to be practiced within an organization to ensure best practices for at a data breach level. Neha? So I will talk about quickly a case study on of what happened actually to show the system might be compromised. Let's say an attacker used the social media and other internet data to find the employee email address of a client. When the email was sent to the targeted employee, he would click on that email and fills the details, which gives access to the attacker the system control which machine he has filled out that form, and then attacker would log into all the systems within the organization, including their HR systems and everything, and take away the data. So this is one of the case study we for one of the clients we did and kind of reported back to the client on how this attacker came into the network, through which email account, through which employee, what were the control lapses and all that. I'll quickly share another case study on the next slide on a ransomware attack investigation we did for an IT company. Client systems were infected with with a malware, where some portion of their systems were hosted inside their infrastructure and few were hosted on a multi-cloud environment. The attack happened on client's cloud setup, and some on-prem systems were also affected. We understood the setup quickly, and performed the investigation in two parts. First part was to identify and deploy a cyber forensic network solution to perform a complete network scan to identify that malware is still existing. And then we analyzed all the data, malware, cleaned up those machines, put back the systems back online for the businesses to continue. This was one of the case, and the approach and findings are listed out here. I'll not spend much of the time here, interest of time. There are multiple case studies mentioned in the next couple of slides. I will quickly touch upon various case studies we have done, not in detail, but just for your knowledge. Neha? In this pandemic, I'll just talk about the cybersecurity resilience. So in the pandemic, we have some guidelines for cybersecurity resilience. We are educating a lot of clients on this, preparing the workforce and promoting well-being, leveraging technology to expand digital workspace capabilities, making cybersecurity as a top priority, which most of the companies are not yet advanced enough to have defensive mechanisms in the organization. And most of the companies we have identified doesn't even have a cybersecurity insurance, which would cause a lot of damage when something happens. So it's not too late, as I say, your organization can take proactive steps not to adapt to changing workspace needs in the face of pandemic and to ensure continuity of business operations. Could you jump on to the next one, please? Yeah. Yeah, see these are some of the case studies. So modification of bank account details during payment process by employee to siphon funds. Automated clearinghouse payment files are maintained manually, which are used to pay employees and vendors and third parties by a client. Banking details of vendors, employees were changed by an employee to his bank account. $100,000 worth funds were siphoned in this method by the employee. That was the modus operandi. Similarly, in another method of modification of details on check to siphon organization funds to employees' personal bank accounts, $200,000 worth funds were siphoned in this method by employee. So this is one of the example I just wanted to touch upon here. The next couple of slides will talk about a couple of more case studies, which I would have to skip as of now in the interest of time. If you can just quickly go into the next case study, Neha. So this is a whistleblower complaint where a breach of confidential information, IP theft was happened. It was it was a classified project. Restricted access was there. Strict in and out data information policies were there. E-surveillance was also there. We performed, forensic with our forensic capabilities, mobile forensics, e-discovery, network scans, call record analysis, and everything. We identified emails that were sent to personal IDs by individuals with critical information. Client data was pulled out. There were multiple files, specifications files were pulled out. With the call records and WhatsApp messages, we have identified data going out of the organization, and using print records, a lot of print logs. When we analyzed, we identified a lot of data was printed which was not supposed to be printed, etc. And finally, this information was exchanged back with the employees. Can you jump on to the next one? So another case study. Yeah. So vendor highlighted a client outstanding invoice of 1 million. The client found that invoice was paid, but new bank account of the vendor was identified. Client approached EY to, for us. But what we did was quickly we got the data from the client, identified using our forensic technologies, identified that one of the employee was ex-employee, added a new bank account, and the amount was sent to that employee. So finally, we traced it. IP was traced, back to the person who did that transaction. Neha, I think we can skip the next couple of case studies as of now. Since we have only 7 minutes left, I will leave the platform for question and answer session. Um, um, so Rama, you want to go ahead and share the questions with me?
Yeah, thank you very much, Arpinder and Shabrinath. Very, very enlightening conversation that we've had. A lot of information. I know that to compress everything into a 45-minute talk is not very easy because it's a very large area you're covering. To participants, I'm not seeing any question at the moment. So kindly keep your questions flowing. Use the chat window and don't address it to a specific person. Just address it in general so that we can see it. While the questions come in, okay, let me probably ask a question to Arpinder. You spoke about the whistleblower protection, the act, the regulations, and all that. So I've also I've observed some of these mischievous, flimsy whistleblower complaints, which was made against a corporate, and suddenly the share price dropping the next day, and the company having to spend several lakhs trying to prove to the public that there's nothing really wrong with the nothing really wrong happening. So do you think in the regulations in the act is there a need to protect the whistleblower as well as to ensure that mischief is prevented?
Arpinder is not on the
Arvind
call.
is not there. Okay. So let me, you want to take it or?
So basically, protection of the whistleblower is the question, right? So
yeah,
I will get back
not
to you on
protection,
this.
but the mischief played by people acting as whistleblowers.
Oh, okay. So this is a question to Arpinder, but
yeah, I
will
would rather ask you the technology part of questions, which I may have. So so I'd request participants to use the chat box to launch their queries. While it comes, Shabrinath, on the with COVID and with the distributed workforce and all that, endpoint data loss prevention (DLP) is becoming a challenge for all the technology people, I guess.
Right.
So can you share what would be the major challenges in endpoint DLP that you're facing with when people work from environment? You have no idea what kind of network they're connecting to and all that, and what can companies do to ensure that they are not vulnerable on that front?
Yeah, definitely. So from a DLP perspective, Rama, this only comes when the data is been exchanged from the organization network to some other, destinations. So DLP logs are becoming extremely challenging for even if you have a DLP solution in place. The DLP solution gives you a lot of output from both positives and negatives, right? So what we have seen the challenges companies are facing now is eradicating the false positives. It kind of gives you activity of everything, and to identify whether the actual data was been exfiltrated from the network is kind of tough. Currently, organizations are facing multiple challenges with there is no right solution from a DLP perspective that it can save everything and cover you 100%. There should be teams who need to kind of 24/7 monitor the systems, identify which data is going, perform a log analysis, transaction analysis on all the DLP output, and then control that whether a possible data is getting exposed or not. So these are the, there is no right solution. I would say the companies have implemented DLPs, but it is kind of not helping clients or organizations to 100% secure their data even after the DLP. So that's the reason multiple tools and technologies needs to be implemented. DLP is one. Your continuous cyber security monitoring SOC should be maintained. 24/7 support to kind of analyze the network traffic is also key to answer the question.
Okay.
Hi, Ramas. Just 1 second. I would like to request you, sir, if you could just check the questions portal. which is right under webcam. There are a few questions addressed. If you could just address them.
I am not seeing any question there. It's blank for me. Is it addressed to
Uh,
some specific person?
so please check the questions portal, not the chat box.
Yeah.
Uh,
Questions portal. I see question and asker, but both are empty. Both fields are empty.
Yeah,
sure,
even
sure.
I see it's empty.
I'll take them up there if
Yeah.
that works. Perfect.
Yeah,
Yeah, sure.
absolutely.
Okay. So Mr. Sundar has asked, can customer-centric process and fraud eradication control go hand in hand?
Can you please put that question again?
Can customer-centric processes and fraud eradication control go hand in hand?
I could not get the question correct. I mean, I'm not able to see the question here. Rama, can you see the question?
No, I'm not able to.
Okay. I'll just move to the second question. I'm audible, right?
Yes,
Yes.
you are.
Cybersecurity is an issue which can drastically affect any organization. Still, we see that these are most neglected during strategic planning or BCB planning. Why is that, and how can organizations ensure that due focus is given on this aspect?
Yeah, definitely. So, cybersecurity program has been neglected, you said. So, companies need to employ cybersecurity programs. Even so, what we have seen is if companies have all the solution in place, still employees needs to be trained on how to use the data, how to respond to incidents, how to report the incidents on time. It also plays a major role. Not only having complete cyber security programs in place would help uh, resolving the cases on time, but the employees needs to be trained frequently. They need to be updated constantly on best practices, on usage of data policies, be it their customer data or internal emails, phishing campaigns, etc. needs to be also considered. If I can answer, I think I've answered the
Yes,
question, but if
thank
you,
you so much. The next question, sir, I'll be just copy pasting the questions for your reference on the chat box as well so that you can view it. So the next question is, how artificial intelligence would be key factor fighting fraud in 2021? What would be ethical artificial intelligence application use cases?
well, that's a good question. There are a lot of tools or technologies being developed now to identify frauds on the real-time basis using artificial intelligence techniques. It's still evolving, I would say. Most of the companies who are primarily focusing on technologies to help prevent frauds are developing more and more solutions. As I say, how AI would be a key factor? Yes, AI will be definitely be a key factor in eradicating fraud or fighting fraud in the coming days. What would be ethical AI applications use cases are? Well, I say ethical. There are most of the tools currently they are using AI methodologies. When you say ethical applications, ethical AI applications, there are a lot of use cases which we have seen in the market in the recent past, where continuous monitoring solutions for monitoring real-time, transaction monitoring is happening. SIEM tools, etc. SOAR SIEM have been used. So there are a lot of use cases I would say which are currently there. Did I answer that question?
Yeah,
Yes.
if I may add a little bit there. So AI is also something which requires a little bit of patience. So AI works best when it has lots of data available, as well as it is given time to learn, because it's a system which learns and progresses over a period of time. So I think we may need to wait a little so that sufficient data and learning has gone in, so that AI systems really yield the results which we expect. Just to add to what Shabri said.
Perfect, sir. Thank you so much. I'll pose the next question. It's by Mr. Akhil. How are natural disasters counted under the top 10 cyber threats?
Our natural
Yeah,
disasters counted under the top
I think in
10
the World
cyber.
Economic Forum report, if you see, five of the top 10 risks are related to environment in some way, global warming and natural disasters and all that. So, yeah, I think so. Shabri, if you want to add something there.
Yeah, I agree with Rama. Rama. So
Perfect.
It's actually very interesting if you see the World Economic Forum's risk report, annual risk report. If you just see that 50% of the top 10 risks are related to environment in some way or the other, and some of them very specifically to natural catastrophes as well as global warming and those kind of things. So it tells us that the world is perceiving nature and environment related risks as some of the top ones which is affecting countries across.
Perfect, sir. Thank you, sir. Posted this next question. How do companies not in the financial services industry help and perform due diligence in fighting money laundering? The question is by Ms. Harshita.
not in the financial industry, meaning other industries, right? So, I mean, industry help and perform due diligence in fighting money laundering. Ashita, I'll get back to you on this after I
Yeah,
discuss with Rapinder. It's a
yeah,
financial.
this is a lot to do with the regulation because Money Laundering Act, the regulations related to that prevent by putting a lot of preventive controls in systems. For example, if you go to a life insurance company and try to take a policy for more than a particular premium, I think it's ₹1,00,000 a year or something like that, it undergoes a check of a database which is there, and those kind of aspects are integrated in the processes of a lot of financial services companies. Now, on the non-financial services, you still are under the regulations, but some of it is not really built into the processes. So it probably is more industry specific.
Thank you, sir. This question was unanswered, so I've posted on the chat again. Can customer-centric processes and fraud eradication go hand in hand?
I think these are not really antagonistic to each other in the sense we don't have to really see as fraud eradication part something which is standing against customer-centric process. So customer-centric processes basically try to enhance the experience of the customer while going through the process. So the fraud part has to be smoothly integrated with the process in such a way that it becomes the routine and the customer experience is not disrupted. So you can have a lot of technology running behind trying to prevent loss and protect the fraud from happening, fraud from really taking place without without affecting the customer experience. So you have to separate these two parts. It is still possible. We don't have to see them as something which is against each other or one will always be negative for the other.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, I don't know whether I addressed that fully, but
sure. I put up the last question, which we'll be taking up right now. It's by Dia. Do you think all countries should legalize the use of cryptocurrencies? And if yes, then why?
So Shabri, shall I? Yeah, okay. So the biggest problem with cryptocurrency is the anonymity that it provides. So typically currency is always centralized. Some kind of a central bank issues it and controls it. Whereas in cryptocurrency, you really don't have a centralized body handling it. System is actually taking care of the trust between two parties exchanging. It's not done by a centralized authority. So which also means that it provides a lot of anonymity to people handling it. So the biggest problem which countries are really struggling to handle in cryptocurrency is the misuse of this for anti-national activities, terrorist activities, smuggling, and those kind of things. If you use cryptocurrency, you really can't trace. If I go back to the example which Shabari mentioned, ransomware, majority of these ransomware attacks, they always ask you to pay in cryptocurrency because you cannot trace it. Whereas in all other kind of transactions, you can always trace where the money goes. At least it'll leave some trail in the system, whereas cryptocurrencies don't. So legalizing the cryptocurrency probably may happen over a period of time in a limited fashion, but the struggle with countries is how to handle the anonymity related to it. You don't know whom you're paying, who's collecting, where money is flowing. That creates a lot of problem, especially from the national security and those kind of aspects. So that is what is preventing this being liberalized. But I'm sure you would see more and more freedom in cryptocurrency, because some countries, especially some in the Middle East, have some in Europe have already accepted cryptocurrency as an alternate possibility.
That's right. Just to add to that, Rama, very well point. For the ransomware example, there are companies who actually do a middleman job between the hacker and the actual company which got affected, dealing with helping them do the Bitcoin payments. So basically, the real example what we are seeing right now, which actually is causing problems, Bitcoin, using Bitcoins, is unless and until you pay that amount which is been listed in the ransomware note, he will not release the decryption keys for companies to decrypt the data. And you really don't know how to catch him. Which country or which person has actually is the owner of that Bitcoin.
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you so much, sir. We'll just take these many questions for the time being. Over to you, Rama, sir.
Yeah, I think I would like to thank both the speakers and ENY for collaborating with this and really giving us a lot of very good content, which has been interesting, and it's a large area, so we have to work ourselves and try to understand it more. But I think you have kindled that interest in all of us to look into this in more detail. So I would like to extend the thanks to all the attendees, and I hope that you have some takeaway from this conversation, and we'll be in touch through the IRM forum. So please use those IRM forums and community to exchange your thoughts and views on this and all other risk related topics. So thank you very much. Till we catch another masterclass session later.